Mega Man 7 should not have been good, which reveals right at the beginning that I think the game is good. But I can do better than that. Mega Man 7 is one of the best Mega Man games ever made. The shocking thing about this very fun and well-designed platformer is that it came together in just a few months. So let's talk about it. We will begin this discussion with the Mega Man Complete Works art book. The Mega Man 7 chapter sees each artist discuss their experiences working on this game in 3 months. Thinking of a major game being developed and completed in 3 months and being well liked, too, is pretty unheard of now. Big games take like half a console generation to make these days. But the truth is, the circumstances behind Mega Man 7 were also unusual even by the standards of the mid-90s. Mega Man had become a yearly franchise. In my videos on Mega Man's 4 through 6, I talked about how getting that many games on one console was pretty unique. But that wasn't even the full extent of Mega Man games. Going into the 90s, Mega Man was on the Game Boy, Mega Man was reaching Sega, Mega Man finally made it to the SNES with Mega Man X. It was one of the most prominent Capcom IPs back then. With the release of Mega Man X, that now meant there were 2 Mega Man franchises running concurrently. Mega Man X2 was the big game in the series for 1994, but Capcom wanted to shift the focus back to the original series for 1995. Mega Man 7 was released in Japan in the spring of that year, and according to the book, making the game in 3 months was just bad timing. Capcom wanted to meet their schedule, and the devs didn't want to delay the game and disappoint the audience, so a team of about 7 programmers really locked in and worked on this game every day and well into the night, to the point where people in the office not working on this game were concerned for those that were, because, as I said, even back then, this was a standout case of crunched development. But evidently, the team felt a real sense of camaraderie and passion to make this the best quality product possible. This was explained a few years back in an interview with Game Informer that Mega Man 11 producer Kazuhiro Tsuchiya did. He was a programmer on Mega Man 7 back in the day and recalled many of his experiences with it.
どこかには載ってる話なんですけど、実は3ヶ月で作ってるんですよ、このゲームって。で、なので本当に時間がなくって、みんな本当に1時間も無駄にはできないっていうぐらいの雰囲気ではあったけれども、みんなその作りたいゲームのビジョンはすごくはっきりしていたので、本当にたった3ヶ月しかなかったんですけれども、すごくそのみんなの思いというか、みんなのクリエイティブがすごく綺麗なパズルでいうと、本当に一気にパズルが完成したっていう風な感じの感触がありますね。だからすごく大変だったけど楽しかったっていう思い出ですね。
The fact that Capcom allowed this game to be so heavily crunched really screams out to me how Mega Man oversaturation was already a huge issue by 1995. The game came out in March, and at that time, Mega Man X2 was only a few months old. But Capcom's desire to churn out another one was unstoppable. Mega Man X3 had to have most of its development outsourced to another company so that the game could be released later that year. Like, my goodness, did they think that was overkill? Well, they certainly did not, because they kept piling on more and more Mega Man games for over 10 years after that point until the diminishing returns started to hit. But that's a story for another day. Keeping the subject on Mega Man 7, I just think it's incredible that this game turned out the way it did, because this environment sounds really stressful, even if the team tried to make the most of it. Another lasting legacy of Mega Man 7 is that it's on the expensive side of SNES games. It's not at the top of the list, but getting a Mega Man 7 cart these days will cost a couple $100s at least. Mega Man X2 and Mega Man X3 are no different, but at least those games had graphical effects in them that made the cartridges inherently more expensive, but Mega Man 7 didn't. These 3 games are expensive now because Capcom didn't make that many copies of them. It turns out that Capcom games weren't meeting sales expectations in the previous year, so these games, among others, got limited releases. Combine that with the game releasing late in the SNES's lifespan, and Mega Man 7 is a game a lot of people missed out on. But that's not a unique story in the Mega Man franchise. Many of these games are more expensive than they really should be. I was at a retro shop a few months ago and saw Mega Man 1 for $80, 2 for $35, 6 for $60, and Mega Man 5 for $180. X2 and X3 are expensive. Mega Man Legends 2 and The Misadventures of Tron Bonne are both expensive. Point is, the series has a long history with expensive collector's item games. But focusing back on Mega Man 7, it wouldn't be more widely available until its release in the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube, but that was only in the US. Nowadays, Mega Man 7 is very easy to get your hands on every console because it was included in the Mega Man Legacy Collection 2 from 2017, which I actually reviewed the day it came out.
So that leads us swimmingly into the Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, which is a compilation containing obviously Mega Man 7, Mega Man 8, Mega Man 9, and Mega Man 10.
Oh, how time flies. But anyway, many fans have played it and seem to like it now. I can't say for certain, but speaking anecdotally, I feel like 10 to 15 years ago, Mega Man 7 wasn't unpopular, but people didn't really get that excited about it. From how I interpreted the audience response, it was as though Mega Man's 7 and 8 were these bland outliers compared to Mega Man's 1 through 6, which were all NES games with the same graphics and style, and Mega Man's 9 and 10 were inspired by those games. And even then, Mega Man's 1 through 3 were the ones really held in the highest regard. Nowadays, I see many more people criticize the first 3 games, appreciate the second 3, and have given a lot more credit to Mega Man 7 and Mega Man 8. I'm glad to see it because ever since I first played it, Mega Man 7 has really stood out in my mind. Seeing this game's footage online made me really want to try it because I thought the cartoony visuals were really appealing. It was August of 2014 when I had enough Wii U eShop money to pick up both Mega Man 7 and Mega Man X, and I got my butt royally kicked in both and dropped them. Then I tried X1 a few months later, and the rest was history. See my various Mega Man videos to hear all about it. But technically, Mega Man 7 was one of the very first games in the series I ever played, for what it's worth. Before making this video, I had beaten the game several times, and always considered it one of classic Mega Man's best games. But as is the case for all 6 of the previous games, I have not played this all the way through in a long time, so I was excited to play it again because I knew I would dig it. The opening cutscene establishes that it's been 6 months since Dr. Wily was finally arrested at the end of the previous game, but he had a failsafe built in. If he didn't check in with his lab once in that time, 4 Robot Masters would activate and begin searching for him, leading to a massive citywide attack as the bots try to break Dr. Wily out of jail. I always liked the sprite art in this cutscene, and the music as well. The whole thing just has more cinematic flair than the intro cutscenes from 4 through 6, as you learn all you need to know about the plot before getting taken to the title screen. The game takes a huge cue from Mega Man X by opening with an intro stage, instead of taking you directly to the stage select like the previous games. Though unlike X1 through X3, you don't get right into the action, Mega Man 7's opening stage has a cutscene before you start playing. This game has more story than any previous classic Mega Man game, and while I appreciate the game making an effort, the dialogue is pretty clunky and the text scrolls by really slowly. In practice, it does feel like a drag when starting up the first stage. But it is funny how this scene reminds the audience how Mega Man has a sister named Roll. It's such an integral part of Mega Man's backstory that Dr. Light created 2 housekeeping robots, Rock and Roll, and Rock became Mega Man, but in the games, Roll appears next to Light at the house at the end of Mega Man 1, and you see her on the list of Robot Masters created by Dr. Light in Mega Man 3, and then she waits for Mega Man at the train at the end of 4, but she's done absolutely nothing besides that. Nice of them to give her some screen time for a change. This scene also introduces a comic relief robot named Otto, who literally has a screw loose on his head. The actual intro stage isn't that in-depth. You just fight some tiny enemies and make a few measly jumps, and that's it. Though I have to say, I find this intro boss pretty odd. I mean, the cutscene shows it was big enough to stand next to a skyscraper, but in the game, it isn't that much taller than Mega Man. So either this scene depicts the robot running over like a model city or something, or Mega Man is almost the height of several buildings. It's up to the audience to interpret which one of those things is true. This is another classic case of the hard-hitting Jay's Reviews analysis the audience is here for. After Wily escapes, Mega Man meets the mysterious Bass, who is allegedly on your side. However, Mega Man doesn't have time to think about it because he needs to deal with these 4 Robot Masters on the loose. Yeah, 4 Robot Masters. Clearly the menu has room for 4 more, but for now you only get to pick between Burst Man, Junk Man, Freeze Man, and Cloud Man. I'm pretty used to hearing that only having 4 stages selectable reduces the freedom you get in playing Mega Man 7 compared to previous games with the full roster. However, designing it like this is much better for 2 reasons, and I'll just go over the first one now and the other one later. I just think that reducing the total number of stages available at the start makes it easier to pick one and probably have a good time with it. In Mega Man 2, you had 8 stages accessible from the start. Metal Man was a pretty easy one, but Heat Man had one obstacle that feels almost impossible without extra unlockables to get past it. Some of these levels will be harder than the rest, but a well-balanced game that lets you pick any stage from the start will make all of them approachable as a first pick. It's a tough balancing act, and the best Mega Man games really pull it off. With these starting 4, I think they're all decent first picks. Freeze Man is the hardest of them all with these slippery ice physics, but the stage gradually introduces more obstacles as you go along that build off of what you've already learned along the way. It's not super hard, it's just more challenging than the rest. I'm sure my point about wanting all the levels to be balanced as a first pick will be met with some pushback, and I see why. Most games didn't have lives and game overs when I started playing video games, so going back to games like Mega Man, I like the idea of beating a stage without getting a game over and having to redo the entire thing. So therefore I like it when the stages are pretty approachable without having played it before. But if that is the kind of thing you grew up on, it makes sense why you wouldn't mind. Even if some commenters are nicer about this disagreement than others. But anyway, looking at these levels, they really put their best foot forward in showing how much the art has evolved. Each NES Mega Man game looked better than the last, but 7 is just bursting at the seams with graphical details that the other games couldn't even dream of. Like the giant lab flasks in the background of Burst Man stage, or the different weather conditions in Cloud Man stage, or effects like the ice cracking in Freeze Man's level. As stated before, everything in this game has a really cartoony aesthetic, and I find it really charming. The game is also really detailed in its animation, like when this Sniper Joe is driving this plow after you, and when it puts it in reverse, you see him do it and then look backwards when going in reverse. Most enemies and obstacles have examples of this you could point to. I think Mega Man 7 outranks the Super Nintendo Mega Man X games when it comes to aesthetics. Those games were not realistic, but they were less cartoony than this game, and thus had more practical locations than 7 often has. I just think this is one of my favorite Mega Man games regarding visuals. With the jump to a new console, the designers got to change up how Mega Man felt to play, when it was largely consistent for the last few games. New features from the X games have made their way into 7, like how you can switch between special weapons with the L and R buttons. But on paper, you can do everything in 7 you could do before, like the usual running and jumping, sliding, and charging the Buster. Though you can now jump and slide again, something that was removed in 6, though I somehow didn't notice that until the comments told me. You can also take hits while charging your shots now, so that's much better than 5 and 6 as well. But the feel of playing as Mega Man is just better to me. Jumps always felt precise, and damage felt like it was my fault. Mega Man takes up more of the screen in this game than he ever used to, but everything else was scaled up alongside him, so I don't think that presents much of an issue. I was kind of going into level design earlier with Freeze Man, and what I liked about that level goes for all the levels you can pick from the start. I like how much variety they pack into each of the stages. Like Burst Man starting with the timed explosive gimmick that debuted in Mega Man 6. But by the end, it's a water stage where you have to navigate spike rooms with the water going up and down. But the stage has thoroughly prepped you for it throughout. Junkman stage has a similar amount of variety from vertical platforming to horizontal platforming with pits and enemies rising out of the junk piles. Cloudman is a new take on Airman's level in Mega Man 2, but I thought it had less waiting around in this version and introduced the gimmick of the changing weather system and these platforms that are only visible when you stand on them. At the end of the level, you'll find this infinitely respawning bird enemy that drops a giant egg filled with tiny bird bots that you blow up, which all drop goodies as well. This is like the enemy in Woodman's level from Mega Man 2, only you really want to stand here and do this over and over again in Mega Man 7 because it's how you get a new collectible, the bolts. But before I even think about talking about that, I figured it would be funny to dig into this enemy and how it highlights my chronically poor observational skills. Somehow in the Mega Man 2 video, I saw this enemy and interpreted these eggs as bags. My mind saw it and interpreted it as something like this. And then I said the magnets in Magnet Man stage in Mega Man 3 were fans. Somehow I didn't connect the name of the stage and the thing pulling you towards it. The comments rightfully roasted me on that one. But hey, it's not the first time, and it probably won't be the last. I swear, in RE0, I remember this boss having claws, and then I wrote it was a crab in the script and didn't bother to check to see it was a scorpion. Silly me! Anyway, you stand here doing this repeatedly for 2 minutes or so, and you'll have more than enough bolts for the entire game. The count maxes out at 999 if you were curious. You use bolts in this game's hidden shop mechanic. By pressing select on the stage select screen, you go to Otto's shop where he sells E-tanks, newly introduced weapon energy tanks, and other useful upgrades like the escape part, which allows you to leave a stage if you've already beaten it if you feel like revisiting it. I called it hidden because by playing the game, there's no way you know there's a shop system. You just have to own the manual and read it. This is unfortunate because getting E-tanks through the shop is your best bet since they don't drop very often and are sparsely hidden in stages. Since the end of the game was designed for you to need them, it's pretty important to have bolts and use them. The game really should have had a text icon on the screen telling you that there was a shop with the select button, if you ask me. But hey, it's cute that Eddie is in Otto's shop. It adds a little bit of context to Eddie in Mega Man's 4 through 6, that Otto was the one making the upgrades that Eddie would bring to Mega Man. That's a nice detail. But the shop isn't your only path to upgrades in Mega Man 7. Rush Coil has returned to your arsenal, and you use it to reach higher areas like always. My only gripe with it and all your other non-special weapon tools is that you can only access them by pausing the game. You can't quickly swap to them with L and R. Only the weapons in the top half of this screen can do that. But you can find other rush abilities in the first 4 stages, like the Rush Search and Freeze Man stage. This makes Rush dig underground, where you can find valuable upgrades. In Freeze Man stage, you can dig up the exit part for free so you don't have to buy it from Auto. Same goes for the Hyper Rocket Buster and Turbo Man stage, and the Energy Equalizer and Shade Man stage. This exploration is the best thing Mega Man 7 retained from Mega Man X. The exploration in this game is not as involved as X, but like those games, it gets you to consider your stage route more deeply than wondering what weapon is good against what boss. For example, the Thunderbolt activates the Power in Junkman stage, giving you a lift to the Rush Jet, which is really useful in the early game. Assuming you don't die trying to get it, I mean, geez, what an idiot I was for my inability to predict that. But anyway, the Freeze Cracker freezes the Magma in Junkman stage as well, which hides one of the Rush letters, so you want to ensure you've beaten both Cloudman and Freeze Man before going to Junkman to ensure you don't have to revisit the stage. Though I must say, some of these weapons have pretty goofy names. I mean, the Danger Wrap from Burst Man just sounds like it belongs in the dollar menu at McDonald's, and the Junk Shield sounds like it belongs in a YouTube sponsorship. And speaking of which, this video was brought to you by absolutely nobody. Bet you fell for it. The aforementioned Rush letters are very important. You find them in the first 4 stages, and grabbing them unlocks the Super Adapter. Think of Power and Jet Mega Man from Mega Man 6, only they've been fused into one thing. Neither element is as powerful as it was before, but it simplifies the system. Mega Man has a charged Rocket Punch and a double jump that's handy numerous times throughout the game. Once you've collected all that and beaten the first 4 Robot Masters, all of which I thought were well-designed fights without their weaknesses, so bonus points for that, you've reached the halfway point of the game, where you get a middle stage. Dr. Wily's attacking the Robot Museum for more mechs and steals Gutsman from Mega Man 1. You can see various bosses from series history in the background here. There's nothing to say about the level itself, it's just a straight line leading to this brief boss encounter, but the music absolutely slaps. It's a remix of Gutsman's stage theme from the first game. The whole soundtrack in this game is pretty enjoyable too. I don't think it's as headbanging as X1 or X3 or even the best of X2, but I think the instrumentation of the game really fits in, and the tracks are all pretty catchy. The back half of the game houses my favorites like Spring Man, Slash Man, and Shade Man. Oh, and speaking of which, what a great and natural segue! You then access Spring Man, Slash Man, Shade Man, and Turbo Man stages. The second benefit of designing a Mega Man game like this is that it allows the designers to create a difficulty curve more easily. As discussed earlier, in a properly balanced game where you can play any of the 8 stages first, you'd want to keep the difficulty roughly equal between them, or risk players wasting time on a stage that was significantly harder than some of the others. Here we have 4 good picks for the first stage, and now 4 more levels that are more challenging. The programmers know what levels and challenges you've beaten to get to this point and can challenge you more in these ones knowing you've got what it takes to do it. Literally, since you've got access to some special weapons and upgrades, and they can design segments that take advantage of them. These last 4 stages have more instant death hazards to navigate around and more complex level design, like when you need to time your movements in Turbo Man stage against these wheels that push you back for fear of running into enemies or spikes. Or the logs falling down in the waterfall in Slash Man stage. Creating a balanced difficulty curve has been an issue the Mega Man team was trying to solve for several games. This is why Mega Man 4 through 6 had 2 sets of fortress levels. You'd play 8 mostly balanced stages, and then play a gauntlet of stages that take advantage of your skills, and then a slightly harder one. Or at least, that was the idea. There was mixed execution in those games, but overall I think this solution is a lot better. You get to grips with the game in the first half, and then you have a harder second half, and then the finale with 1 fortress. The last 4 Robot Master stages also house plenty of cool secrets too, such as finding Auto's missing Bolt and Springman stage. This halves the price of everything in his shop, so I usually hold off on buying anything until I get this. Slash Man stage has a part with trees that you can burn with Turbo Man's weapon, revealing Beat trapped in a cage. Saving him gives you another ability, using Beat to rescue you from bottomless pits, which happened to me in one of the final stages. But it's not just upgrades that make these levels interesting. If you hold the shoot and jump buttons when picking Shade Man stage, you'll listen to a remix of the Ghosts and Goblins music throughout the level, another Capcom game. Though I honestly prefer the actual theme in this stage, but it is a cool Easter egg. This level has 2 secrets in it. There's this Pumpkin Bot mini-boss with multiple layers. If you shoot and destroy the inside layer, you open up a path to fight Proto Man, and defeating him gets you his shield, which blocks energy weapons, and that can come in handy a few times throughout the game. But there's another secret here that I didn't even know about until this very playthrough. If you shoot the eyes on the outer layer, you get a different path of the energy equalizer. I was pretty surprised to find that out, but to reduce backtracking, I take the Proto Man route and buy the equalizer from Auto. Another thing I really appreciate about these final 4 stages is the consistently great theming. Turbo Man's is themed around vehicles and car parts, Slash Man's is a robotic Jurassic Park, and Shade Man's is a robot graveyard where beat-up machines rise from the ground. It's all really cool and creative. Spring Man is kind of an outlier though, it's just a bunch of springs plastered all over the wall. But to give the mech his dues, I didn't remember who was weak to what, so I was just completely winging it when it came to the boss order here. I actually found Shade Man is easier without his weakness. I thought it was hard to be precise with the Wild Coil compared to the Mega Buster where I could repeatedly get shots in. But then Spring Man really surprised me. With his weakness, he's one of the easiest bosses in the game, but without it, Mega Man can just get bodied by Spring Man and tossed around the room. It was honestly kinda humorous. If you were curious though, Slash Man is weak to both Freeze Man and Torch Man's weapons, so if you're partial to using weaknesses, you start there. Then Spring Man, then Shade Man, and finally Turbo Man. No matter what, I always hate fighting Slash Man though. I never know when these red things are gonna drop and I always get hit by it, and it makes it so you can't do any attacks until a few seconds go by. But moving on, at the end of Shade Man's stage, you find Bass battle damaged. Mega Man sending him to Light's lab for repairs, but surprise, Bass is evil and was created by Wily, and now he can use Light's blueprints for the super adapter to give Bass and his dog Treble the same powers, challenging Mega Man to come to the fortress, beginning the final set of stages. But if you made it this far, there isn't too much to say. I think the Wily Castle in Mega Man 7's pretty good stuff. It recycles obstacles from earlier in the game, but remixes them for greater challenge, like navigating rooms of enemies where the lights are only on when you jump, and doing that in a room where you only have a limited time to stand on these moving platforms. Some of the castle stages in the previous games are on the easy side, and Mega Man 7 strikes a nice balance. I don't think there's anything show-stopping in these levels, but they're a worthy challenge for the final levels without being annoying or boring. Helps that there's such consistently good music here. Wily Castle 1 is a really climactic track, and then Wily Castle 2 is always a good listen because it sounds like Thriller. Mega Man battles Bass twice in the fortress, though these are probably the easiest battles in the game. He just jumps around shooting in the first one, easily defeated with the Rocket Punch, and the same goes for round 2 when he's fused with Treble. But I think Bass is a cool character as a dark rival to Mega Man. Though he doesn't really do anything of note in Mega Man 7, especially since those bosses are so easy, but he's an iconic character nevertheless, and will be well used in later entries, so that's good enough for me. The Bass battles are easy, and I'd say the other fortress bosses too, only they tend to go on for a really long time. Particularly the Turtle battle, I just thought that was a war of attrition that never ended. But it's all fun and games until you reach Wily Castle 4, perhaps the most infamous part of Mega Man 7, and it's all thanks to that fucking stupid boss rush. Yeah, I'm being serious. I think the problem with this level starts and ends here. I've been adamant in my anti-boss rush sentiment for almost a decade, and I'm not gonna stop saying it because it always sucks. Here's the problem. The final boss of Mega Man 7 was, by their own admission, designed to be as difficult as possible. They wanted an encounter that basically required a full supply of E-Tanks. The only thing that does a significant amount of damage is the charged Wild Coil, and even then, not much. While the attacks from Wily feel almost impossible to dodge. Technically, you can do it no damage. Anything's possible, but it was designed to be very difficult to do so. When I fight this boss, it usually takes me almost all 4 of my E-Tanks because the attacks hurt quite a lot. But then, I don't think creating a tough final boss is really a crime. It's the damn boss rush that makes it so bad. The stakes for getting a game over to Wily Castle 7 is redoing the boss rush. Refighting 8 battles you've already beaten, when you stand there and spam weaknesses and win without effort for several minutes on end. You could fight without weaknesses, but I'm trying to save resources for the final boss, which is right after. If you could game over on Wily, buy more E-Tanks, and just start again, there really wouldn't be anything wrong with this. I don't even think the boss is that hard to beat. With a full supply of E-Tanks and weapon energy tanks, I've beaten Wily Capsule 7 first try on all 3 of the playthroughs I did for this video, but the principle is that if you're designing a final boss that's meant to be a lives drainer, placing it after a tedious slog of nothing that lasts 5 minutes or whatever just knocks the wind out of your sails right at the end. I truly see no reason to have them, especially when later Mega Man games have checkpoints after game overs, making the challenge of boss rushes effectively moot. If a Mega Man game ever removes this horrible section, it might be a shoo-in for one of the best in the franchise. But that's my endgame speech. I truly have more of an issue with the boss rush than the infamous final boss. But once you win, Mega Man becomes bloodthirsty out of nowhere. He intends to just kill Wily this time, and Wily reminds him that machines can never directly harm humans. To which, Mega Man claims that he's more than a robot, and Wily must die. Until the fortress explodes and Wily escapes with the help of Bass. This is a casual example of how US localization teams were just free to make up crap when translating games. That did not happen in the original Japanese script. Mega Man is reminded that he can't hurt Wily directly and has nothing to say to that because he's right. Don't ask me how all those exploding machines never hurt Wily before, but regardless, that is the point. Robot masters like Mega Man actually can't do anything against a human. Mega Man's job is to stop Dr. Wily's reign of terror and leave it at that. That is what made Mega Man X different. He was a truly free-willed machine with a passion for justice like no other. The US ending of Mega Man 7 is just not canon, because it's impossible to have taken place. But also, Mega Man is meant to be a robotic 10-year-old boy or whatever. Him passionately wanting Wily to die is just highly out of character. But it also changes the meaning of the credits. Mega Man walking away from the burning castle is usually talked about as a badass ending, following the butchered final scene, but in the original script where Mega Man is unable to finish Wily even if he wanted to, it makes this part seem a little more somber. Like Mega Man's walking away from yet another Wily fight, knowing he'll have to fight again whether he wants to or not, because that's his role as the hero and Wily refuses to change. But that's looking all deep at the characters of Mega Man 7, so I guess we should wrap it up. I'm just saying, it's something the original creators worked on, and I feel like the US version doesn't do it any justice. But if you want to experience that original version in English, you have many options. I went to romhacking.net and checked out Mega Man 7 Restoration, a hack that brings back many things from the Japanese version that got lost in translation, including a fixed script with improved grammar and more faithful dialogue to the original Japanese version. The ability to fast forward through cutscenes, which is a godsend, restored subtitles for boss intros, these cutscenes between Mega Man and Roll and Mega Man and Auto that the English version didn't bother with, and other cool things. It's definitely the best way to play Mega Man 7, and it will be how I revisit the game whenever I do. But when looking past that and just focusing on my overall thoughts on the game, I think it's fantastic. Circling back to how we started, this game was developed in 3 months. But look at the sheer unrelenting attention to detail. Mega Man 7 is clearly a labor of love. These are not the conditions you'd want any game to be made under, but it's a fantastic display of talent nevertheless. Mega Man 7 is a stellar action platformer. It took all the best ideas from previous Mega Man games, streamlined them, and made the best classic Mega Man experience up to this point, while taking what it could from Mega Man X and integrating that into the classic formula. If you played this game blind, you'd have really no idea this was ever a difficult project to work on because the talent from the artists and programmers just shines through in the final product. A robust, fun, fast, replayable action side-scroller, and you really couldn't ask for more. It's one of, if not my absolute favorite game in the classic Mega Man saga. Sure, I'd play Mega Man X1, 2, 3, and 4 over this, and probably 0, 3, but it's definitely among the ranks of my favorite Mega Man games. Top 10 for sure. But yeah, not much else to add besides that. I love this game, so much so that I played it 3 times for the video and just had an endless amount of fun with it. I'll be sure to keep revisiting it in the future, because it has a lot to offer. But next up on my list is Mega Man 8 on PlayStation. So hope everyone's looking forward to that. To close, I'll say what I always do. If you made it this far into the video, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.